I'm introducing layers, the concept of layers, which we haven't talked about, but they're very helpful. So if I'm going to show you something wrong, so don't follow along with this. I'm going to add a circle to my existing object, and I just added it on this keyframe. And now if I insert a keyframe to do some frame by frame, they move together. Or, I don't want to move them together, so I'm going to do Control Z or an undo. I want the circle to go one way and the rectangle. So if I double click on the circle, I can move it, but it takes a chunk out of the other object. But I can move them. It's just it's taking a chunk out of the object below it. So we don't want that kind of thing to happen. So I'm going to start a brand new file. And in the process, I will review animation a little bit, but show layers. So I want to just have this object moving a little bit. So I'm just going to have a couple keyframes. Insert a keyframe. I'm not really changing anything other than its location. If I hit enter, I have it moving. But here's a layer. So now I'm going to come down here. There's a couple different ways to do it. If I click on this plus, it adds another layer. I'm going to undo to show you some of the other ways. You can also right click and insert a layer. That's for some reason the way I often choose, but I want you to know there's other ways to do it. Or under insert, timeline, I can add a layer. You can do it any of the ways you want to add a layer. So I'm going to go back to frame 1, and I'm on my brand new layer, and on frame 1 of my new layer, I'm going to draw a blue box. And I want to animate the blue box. So I'm going to insert a keyframe and move it a little bit. Insert a keyframe, move it a little bit. So I'm animating this separately. And as soon as I insert a keyframe on frame 6, the circle disappears. And it doesn't disappear because it's behind the other object. It disappears because there's nothing on this frame at all. So the square has a keyframe, but the circle doesn't. So to get it back, I can right click and insert a keyframe. So it's still there. And if I want to, I can move that a little bit. So I want to insert a keyframe on the blue square. Let me rename this so I know which one. I'm going to call this layer blue. I just double clicked on the layer name that's there, and I'm going to call this one red just so I can tell the difference. So the red is missing a frame, so I can right click, insert a keyframe, move it a little bit, insert a keyframe, and the blue rectangle disappeared because I have nothing on this keyframe. So I want to get it back, so I'm going to insert a keyframe, move it a little bit. And no pieces, no chunks were taken out of the other one. I have 2 items crisscrossing. I have 2 items moving at the same time. And that's the concept of layers. You can insert as many layers as you want to. You can organize them with folders, which we'll learn in another tutorial. But we're just getting started. I want you to know that anything you have moving, anything that you have stationary, they should all go on their own layers. So if I have a basketball hoop, that will go on one layer. A basketball that needs to go into the hoop needs to go on its own layer. Anything, the hoop would be stationary, it's on its own layer. The ball is moving, it's on its own layer. So everything that you have that's moving or staying still should go on its own layer. And that's the idea of working with layers.